everyone. It is so good to be back with Gab with Garima. It's been a really, really, really long time, and I look forward to talking to all of you. And today I am talking about flexibility is the key to air power. And I know that that may not mean a lot to a lot of you, but it is a very near and dear phrase for me because at Crummer, so to all my Crummer grads out there who did their MBA at Crummer at Rollins, one of the classes that we took was with Dr. E, and it was quantitative business analytics. And that sounds like such a boring, difficult topic, which I can assure you, Dr. E made it anything but. And one of the things that he would always say was that flexibility is the key to air power. And he said it all the time. And if you ever took his class or ever walked by his class, you would know that that's something that he said. It was kind of his catchphrase. And I don't think I knew back then what it meant. It was something that he said, and it was part of analytics, and that was great. But I don't think I had any idea what that really meant. And I think that it's taken me, that was 10 years ago. So it's probably taken me the past 10 years to really understand and respect the value of flexibility in all spheres of life. So, first of all, what is that? Like, where did this phrase come from? Flexibility is key to air power. So, airmen always say this, right? So if you're in the Air Force, you probably have heard this before. The phrase was actually coined by an Italian air power strategist. He wrote a book called The Command of the Air in the 1920s, and that's where the phrase came from. But if you think about an airplane, the way that an airplane flies, it has to be flexible. If the wings don't flex, there's no aerodynamic stability. Like the wings would break. So it's really important that the wings can flex and move and do that kind of thing in order to have that aerodynamic stability. And the more streamlined that airplane can be, and it experiences less drag over time. So that's why flexibility is so important when we talk about aircrafts. Aircraft designers calculate the maximum stress that they anticipate that the wing will experience in flight. So they look at how much stress do they think it'll happen depending on how high and how much wind and all of that. And then they design the wing to be able to hold 50% more as a safety measure. That's how kind of aircraft wings are designed. And I know you didn't join here to talk about aircraft wings, but I think that it's important to kind of know where this comes from, because when you think about an airplane and you think about uh, just this huge hunk of metal, I don't think you're always thinking of the word flexibility. Like, another place that you see flexibility that's really surprising is in skyscrapers. During Hurricane Katrina, actually, I was in Miami, and I was in a top floor of a building. My friend lived at the 37th floor of a building there, a condo unit there. And during Hurricane Katrina, the entire building was swaying, and being so high, you could see the curtains kind of going back and forth. And it was really weird, but it happened because the wind was so strong. And so, therefore, that flexibility was key, because the key to flexibility is that if you don't bend, you will break. So if the wing on an airplane doesn't know how to bend or flex, it's going to break. If the skyscraper doesn't bend and sway side to side with wind, it will break. So that's why there's this idea the flexibility is the key to air power. But when we think about this in management and business, it equally applies across the board. And it applies, the bigger you are, like the higher the skyscraper, the larger the plane, right? The more flexibility you need. So you have to be able to be flexible in any size businesses, any size organization, especially kind of as large as you get. So what are some examples that this happens? So when we think about COVID over the past couple of years, and you think about how businesses have changed, it has changed immensely, and had to be a lot more flexible because of COVID. I think we can all talk about that, right? We all know, and we've all kind of gotten over all of that and probably don't want to revisit all of the changes that businesses had to make. But let's talk about some major companies that really transformed their business, and that changed their entire business model, or changed how and what they did, and it completely made them more successful. And it was that flexibility that gave them that ability to, you know, exceed and be excellent and be successful. So think about Netflix. So when Netflix first started, it was just kind of a streaming platform. And when Netflix decided that they were going to go ahead and create content, that was the turning point for them. So it was a great company, it was doing well, but not fantastic, just doing okay, until they decided to create their own content and force people to have Netflix to view that content and really started. And think about the amount of spend. Think about that gamble, that bet that Netflix would have had to make to say, we have a streaming platform, it does well, but now we're going to go ahead and create our own content. And think about how much they paid for shows like House of Cards or whatever you may think of that's a Netflix show that had these huge superstars, not even knowing if people would watch it. And they changed the way that content is given and produced and who's producing it and where it's coming from. Changed the game completely and completely changed the trajectory of their company. Amazon was a bookstore. That's all you could buy on Amazon. You went and bought books. Now it's a marketplace of everything. I think I have 17 Amazon packages lying outside my front door right now. Everything from household goods to clothing. Amazon is kind of that go-to place, and creating that marketplace and making sure that they were that flexible in their business model and distribution, and allowing, now they get money and revenue from the sellers and the retailers and the buyers. I mean, they're making money kind of on all sides of the transaction, and that's really changed their business model as well. Google. Google was just a search engine, right? It's a place that you went and search, and they were losing money hand over fist until they made AdWords. And if you've ever done anything and you look at an ad or looked for something on Google and you get those sponsored ads, people are paying big money to be posted on that first page. And the whole idea of PPC, Google made that a reality, and they're making millions by billions by doing that and having and changing their entire business model. Apple, another one, right? Apple was trying to make everything back in the late 90s. I mean, they've gone like from 93 to 97, they'd gone from just making computer to all of a sudden trying to make cameras and this, and they weren't doing so well as a company. And if you think about your childhood and you thought about Apple and it wasn't this exciting thing, Microsoft was definitely winning. The PC was winning that war for sure. And then all of a sudden, Steve Jobs came back and they designed everything from an iPad to an iPhone and these beautiful consumer products and a MacBook. And that changed what Apple did and what you think of when you think of Apple. And now you think of these beautiful white encasings and how that's what you think of Apple today, and you think of it at the forefront of technology, which definitely wasn't only 25 short years ago. So that's some examples of how flexibility and transformation has changed a business completely. I look at Biller Genie, and we only launched about 2.5 years ago, and we really thought that we were going to be a payments company. We thought we were going to grow up and be a payments company, and that's what we were going to do. And our software was just going to be a freemium model. And we transitioned within 1 month of launching, we transitioned to no longer being a payments company, but being a standalone SaaS solution that services the payments and banking industry. And that is a huge, large scale change. It included everything from our pricing to our sales strategy to how we went to market. But you think about that, and that's why we grew. That's what allowed us to get to the levels that we're at. So, you think about, what does flexibility mean as a whole? It usually means the response to one or more variables to a change in one or more variables. So how did we change our workforce when there was a change in the global economy because of the pandemic, right? How do you change your overall managerial plans? How do you change your overall business trajectory based upon what is going on in the environment around you? So ensuring that you have a resilience of policies is still important, but that resilience will only come with flexibility. So, what are some of the lenses that you can think of your own company and you can think of the flexibility that you may need to have or in your own role? The first is new growth. How do you foster growth? And it's really hard because, as any company, any business, you always want growth, whether it's growth in revenue, whether it's growth in number of people, whether it's growth in just customer base, you always want some kind of growth. And growth is challenging because we often get stuck in our own heads of what the company does, what we stand for, how we do it, and who we do it for. But if you start thinking about distribution channels and what are those distribution channels that you currently serve, and are those the best distribution channels to solve the problem or to get you the customers that you want who are experiencing that problem and will have a need for your product or service, that will change your entire mentality on your distribution channels. M&A, that's another scary one, right? Would you do better together? Is there a way that maybe if someone buys you, if you merge with another company, if you acquire another business, how does that change your growth and your growth trajectory? Do you become a different business? And this sometimes is really scary because maybe the company that's looking to buy you or merge with you, or the company you're looking to buy, doesn't share the same ideals or culture or business plan or anything like that. And how do you bring that together in the best way for both organizations and the best way for the organizations kind of going forward? The next one is, so new growth is the first one we talked about. The second one is repositioning your core. So when you think about that Amazon example and you think of what their core product was, which in their case was books, and what problem does it solve? Well, it solved the problem of people not being able to buy books and kind of going after Barnes and Noble and those types of things. But what problem does it solve? And was it a big enough problem that people were willing to flock to their platform? When they looked at their core product and they said, no, actually, what we're really good at is logistics. We're amazing at delivery. We're really good at getting things in people's hands quickly. And if we can use that and put other products in it, our core product isn't actually books. Our core product is our logistics and distribution system. And that's what we want to leverage. So understanding what your core is and repositioning that core to find out what really drives the business and where that value is. I mean, you think about even cryptocurrency, and often, maybe cryptocurrency is not picked up across the board in terms of people using crypto to make payments and buying things on a day-to-day basis. You're not going to Walgreens and necessarily paying with Bitcoin, but the blockchain technology that came out of that has changed so many industries and continues to do so. So that repositioning of the core of what is the actual business, what is the problem, what is the product, and why are you solving it, and why are you best positioned to do so? Financials. This one's another one that's really tough, right? So there's three lenses to think about flexibility. The first one is new growth. The second one is repositioning the core. And the third one is financials. Are you willing to change your pricing? Are you willing to add revenue streams? And again, that can be extremely uncomfortable if you've got thousands and thousands of customers that work with you because of your price point. Maybe increasing that price point is scary, and maybe it's not what you want to do. Maybe you need to decrease the price point so you increase the number of customers that come in. Maybe, like in the Amazon example, you need to change the revenue stream. So now you're not just getting revenue from one place, but you're getting revenue on all ends of the transaction, whether that be buyer or seller or supplier. Really important to think about what are those revenue streams and what are those financials that go along with it. And those are the overall lenses to think about flexibility overall in your business, right? What are my best ways for new growth? How can I reposition my core, or do I need to reposition my core? And how can I do this from a financial perspective of either changing pricing, adding revenue streams, or something else that is really or maybe it's even cutting expenses that might also be extremely uncomfortable. If you are able to be flexible as an organization, you will have long-term resilience. You will be able to withstand the change that is always looming, that is always coming. There's always something around the corner. There's always something that is going to fundamentally change the business, whether it changes you or changes the economy or changes your specific sector that you're in or your industry. You have to be able to be resilient, and you cannot be resilient without flexibility. So the ability to do that, and you think about some of the behemoths that we used to think of it in the past. You think about companies that did long distance, right? They weren't able to make a change. They weren't able to transform their business model, and so therefore they break. So if you're not able to bend easily, you will break. The ability to modify and respond to altered conditions, right? Companies that weren't able to survive COVID probably didn't. Right now, there's companies that can't survive in what's happening with the economy because they're not able to respond to those situations. Some people aren't able to respond to the fact that the workforce is changing and the people that we're hiring and where they want to work and how they want to work and the flexible lifestyles. That's a change too. Um, you should always anticipate a safety margin. So, we talked about the planes and the wings, and that 50%, they always looked at what was the maximum that a wing would need to sustain, and then add 50% for your safety margin. So, always anticipate that you will need a 50% or more safety margin for your bandwidth and intake, because I think we often, and I know I do this all the time, um, underestimate how hard something will be or how much it will stress the company to make changes. So, how do you do this? So, I've got 3 steps to really making yourself a more flexible business and ensuring that you have resilience. Number one, empower your staff. If you've ever heard me speak or if you've ever spoken to me, you know how important I think this is. Your staff should be empowered as entrepreneurial thinkers. If they know that they are more than just a cog in the wheel, if they are able to take ownership and accept full responsibility for the outcome, they will be more likely to make the changes necessary and be able to embrace the changes in order to get the job done. So if everybody needs to get to point A from point A to point B and there's a roadblock, that if you have an entrepreneurial thinker, if you have someone who's willing to be empowered and take accountability, they will figure out how to get from point A to point B regardless of the roadblock. They'll fly over it. They'll go around it. They'll break through it. They will figure out how to do that, but they will not do that if you don't allow them to. Number two, build on trust. Another one, you got to ensure that you trust the employees and also, more importantly, trust your gut. You're going to make a bunch of decisions and probably 90% will be wrong if it's in my case, but 10% will be amazing. Think about all the bets that we make. And we know that some of them aren't going to turn out great. But if you trust your gut and you're able to make some of those decisions and take those risks to try something new and be willing to make a change, you will always be able to find that resilience. And then you're always tweaking and always kind of buddy. Everybody should have a huge skill set, a big ability to pull from so that when something changes and you have to change the entire work process or the product or whatever, you have a huge group of people that are capable of fitting into any seat and understanding the why behind what they're doing because they know everything from marketing to sales to support to development. They know exactly what all of these people are doing and why they're doing that, how the product works, understanding all of that. So if you silo your brain as well as your employees, they'll never be able to do that because once you make a change, they have an entire group because they don't know how to be flexible because you've made a change and now made that team redundant, which is extremely, extremely hard to plan for and also execute because now you have to think about all the new people that you may need to hire. So the last thing about flexibility is that, when we talk about flexibility in the workplace, this has changed a whole lot. And I think that, had a talk around the gig economy and what that really means. And flexibility is becoming more and more important to employees and employers. And not embracing that change and not understanding the need for flexibility over longevity is really going to hurt companies going forward. So, hopefully everybody's able to really embrace and be okay with things changing and changing quickly and changing all the time, especially in the world that we're in right now and at the rapid pace that information is transferred, and be a lot more flexible and look at it through those lenses of flexibility and figure out how you can make things better and make a small change that'll make a huge impact. But that's all I've got today, unless anybody has any questions. But I look forward to talking to you guys soon, and we'll be doing this once a month now. So I look forward to having you guys. Thanks. Talk to you soon. Bye.